So we're going to start with Test 1, Module 1, Homework 1. So these are the notes that you're going to need to be prepared for Test 1. So the first thing we're going to do is solving linear equations. So when we're solving an equation, we're going to use opposite operations to cross over the equal sign. So anytime you have addition, to cross over that equal sign, you have to use subtraction. And anytime you have multiplication, you're going to use division to cross over that equal sign. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start this out by drawing a line down our equal sign here. And in doing that, that shows us the left side of the equation and the right side of the equation. And whatever we do to the left side, we also have to do to the right side. So we're going to get this x term by itself. So we need to get x alone, which means we're going to move this -2. So for us to move that -2, the opposite operation is to add 2 to both sides. So now we're left with -7x, -2 plus 2 equals 0, so those cancel out. And then we get -65 plus 2, which is -63. Now, since the -7 is touching the x, that means that there's multiplication in between them. The opposite of multiplication is going to be division, so we're going to divide by -7 on the left and divide by -7 on the right. And we end up with x equals, and 7 times 9 is 63, so we get a +9. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so that's how we get +9. Now, before we move on, I want to just go over this. -7 and x are touching. We're going to break those two apart. That's why we divide by -7. You can't add 7 at that step. So our next equation, we're going to draw the line for our equal sign. And we want to get the x term by itself, so we need to move this -7 to the other side. So the opposite of -7 is +7, so we're going to add 7 on the left and the right. And we end up with x over 8 equals 14. Now we can go back and look. -7 plus 7 equals 0, so those cancel out. So now we have x divided by 8. The opposite of division is going to be multiplication. So we are going to multiply by 8 on both sides. I'm going to put some parentheses in just to be sure that we don't change anything to addition or subtraction. We want to make sure it's multiplication, so make sure you write it as multiplication. So on the left, we have 8 on top, canceling 8 on bottom, and we're just left with x equals, and 14 times 8 is 112. So this next equation is a little different. Here, the example we did above, we only had x on one side of the equal. Now the next example, we've got 7x on the left and 2x on the right. So we're going to write this where we have a little bit more room. 7x minus 4 equals 2x plus 9. And let's look at our notes box over here. That says move all the variables to one side of the equal and all the numbers to the other side. So we are going to take this 2x and we're going to move it to the left, and we're going to take this -4 and we're going to move it to the right. Now you could start this question another way. You could move the 7x to the right and the 9 to the left, and you're still going to get the same answer. So our end goal is to get the variable term alone before you multiply or divide. So we're going to use addition and subtraction first. So we've got the center of our equation. We're going to get all the x's together. So since this 2x is positive, we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. 7x minus 2x is 5x. -4 comes straight down. 2x minus 2x cancels, and we're still left with +9. Now we're going to move that -4 by adding 4 to both sides. Remember, we do the opposite operation. And we end up with 5x equals +13. And this -4 plus 4 cancels out. Now we're down to multiplication. We got the x term alone, so now we need to break up this multiplication by using division. So we're going to divide by 5 on the left and divide by 5 on the right. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so those cancel out, and we're left with x equals 13/5. Now, if we look back at our directions, you'll see that it says, enter your answer as an integer or a reduced fraction. Do not use mixed numbers. So we're going to put our answer into our homework program just the way that it is. 13/5, that's a reduced fraction, and we're not turning it into a mixed number. Okay, looking at the next one. We are going to use the distributive property, combine like terms on each side of the equal sign if you can, and then we're going to get the variable term alone. So I'm going to zoom in so we can see those steps. This one has a set of parentheses here. So for us to get rid of the parentheses, we're going to distribute the 7 inside the parentheses. So here we end up with 14v, because 7 times 2v is 14. And then we have 7 times +1, so we get +7 equals 35. So now we can combine like terms on each side if you can. So if we look at the left, we don't have any like terms, so we don't have to combine anything. So now we just need to get the variable term alone. So we want to get this 14v by itself. So that means we need to move that +7. So the opposite of +7 is going to be -7. So we're left with 14v equals 28. Then we can break apart that multiplication with division, and we get v equals 2. So this next one is a little bit longer. We got a little more going on. So let me move this out of our way. So we're still going to mark the center of our equation. So that's our equal sign. And we're going to look at the left first. So just looking on the left side of the equal, let's see what we can do. So we're going to distribute here. negative 2 times d is negative 2d. Then we have negative 2 times 9 is going to be negative 18 minus 11d. So we used the distributive property. Now we need to combine like terms if we have them. So here we have d to the first and d to the first. So that's going to give us negative 13 d to the first minus 18. So now we have combined like terms. Can we do anything else here on the left side? One of these has a d, one of them does not, so we can't combine them anymore. So now we need to look at the left side, or the right side of the equal. We don't have parentheses, so we don't need to distribute, and we don't have like terms, so there's nothing we can do on the right side, so we're just going to copy it the way that it is. So we have 13d minus 18. Now, we're going to put all the d's on one side together. So we're going to add 13d to both sides. Negative 13d plus 13d cancels. Negative 13d plus 13d cancels. So that means all of the d's are gone now, and we just have negative 18 equals negative 18. Now, the question is this true? So the answer is yes, it is true. Negative 18 does equal negative 18. So our answer is all real numbers. So looking at our next one, we're going to draw the center. And let's do the same thing. We're going to look at the left side first and see what we can do. So we have these parentheses here. We're going to need to distribute to get rid of those. So first we have 5 comes down. Then 2 times 6x is going to give us 12x. Then we have 2 times 4, which is going to give us 8. Then we're going to look for like terms. We do have like terms here. 5 and 8 are like terms. So we end up with 12x plus 13 equals 12x plus 7. Now we need to get all the x's together. So we're going to minus 12x from both sides. And when we do that, 12x minus 12x cancels. And we're just left with 13. On the right side, 12x minus 12x cancels. And we're just left with 7. So now all the x's canceled. And our question is this true? Do we have a true statement here? Does 13 equal 7? We know that it doesn't, so it's not true. So our answer for this one is going to be no solution. So next is the table. And this has a summary of the 3 types of solutions that you get when you solve an equation. So the first type is one unique solution, and that's when you get to the end and you have x equals a number. We did an example like that. If we go back up here, we started out with an equation and we got to the end and we got x equals 13 over 5. So that's an example of one solution. Then the next scenario is when you get all real numbers, and that's when all the variables cancel. And in the end, we have something that's true. 0 equals 0 is true, 5 equals 5 is true. So our answer would be all real numbers. And then our third scenario is when we get no solution. And again, all the variables cancel. And this time we get something that's not true, or a false statement. 5 does not equal 0, and -2 does not equal 3. So our answer for that would be no solution. So now we're going to do a quick fraction review. It's probably been a little while since you did fractions. So first we're going to look at our negative signs. If we have one negative in front in the middle, that is the same as having one negative on top or one negative on the bottom. And this is because a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So it doesn't matter where that negative sign is, we still end up with a negative number or a negative answer. So now when we're multiplying fractions, we have top times top, bottom times bottom, and then simplify. Or you can simplify, then multiply straight across. So this would be 3 times 1 on top over 5 times 2 on bottom, which equals 3 over 10. 3 over 10 does not simplify, so this is the final answer. So when we divide fractions, we are going to do keep, change, flip. So that means we keep the first fraction, change the division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip the second fraction. So if we keep the first one the same, 3 over 5, we're going to change this division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip the second fraction, and it becomes 2 over 1. And then we're going to multiply. Same rule for multiplication, 3 times 2 on top, 5 times 1 on bottom, and we get 6 over 1. So again, that's top times top and bottom times bottom. Now 6 over 1 simplifies to be, that's not a 1. Let's back up a second. That's going to be 6 over 5. And that doesn't simplify, so we're finished there. So when we add fractions, we need to get a common denominator. So we need a common denominator to add or subtract fractions. So this example does not have a common denominator. Between 5 and 2, our least common denominator is going to be 10. That's because 10 is divisible by 5 and 10 is divisible by 2. So we need to get the 5 in our denominator to be a 10. So we're going to multiply by 2 over 2. Now, 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. So we're not changing the value of the fraction, we're just changing the form of it. So here we end up with 2 times 3, which gives us 6, and 2 times 5, which gives us 10. Now when we look at our second fraction, we need this 2 to be a 10. So we're going to multiply by 5 over 5. And again, anything divided by itself always equals 1. When we multiply by 1, we're not changing the value, we're just changing what it looks like. So here we have 1 times 5, which is 5, and 2 times 5, which is 10. So now we can add the tops and keep the denominator the same. So we end up with 11 over 10, which doesn't simplify, so we're finished. Same thing for subtraction. This is going to be the same two fractions that we just worked with. So we have 3 over 5 minus 1 over 2. Our least common denominator is going to be a 10 again. So we would do the exact same thing, multiply by 2 over 2 and 5 over 5. That's going to give us 6 over 10 minus 5 over 10, which is the same as 6 minus 5 over 10, which equals 1/10. If you need more support with fractions or you need to do more fraction review, you can always go on the ASC Lab or the Tutor Lab website and find the fraction videos on there, or you can email me and I can send you additional fraction videos to review. So just for a quick definition review, the LCD is going to be the least common denominator, and that is the smallest number that's divisible by all denominators. So our next example says find the LCD for 8 and 36. So the way that I do this, I look at the biggest number and I check to see, is 36 divisible by 8? We know that 36 is not divisible by 8. So then we're going to take that 36 and we're going to multiply it by 2. So 36 times 2 gives us 72. So then we're going to ask the question again, is 72 divisible by 8? We know the answer to that. We know that 72 is divisible by 8 because it's 8 times 9. So 72 is going to be our least common denominator. Now, if 72 didn't work, then I would take 36 and I would multiply it by 3. Then we would take 108 and we would say, is 108 divisible by 8? And we would keep going until we got the yes that we needed. Now, we already got it because 72 is divisible by 8. So we already found the LCD as 72. This 8, the 8 that we're dividing by, here, here, and here, is coming from the other number that we're talking about. So now we're getting into solving equations with fractions. So instead of working with the fractions, I'm going to multiply by the least common denominator to get rid of the fractions. So first, let's look at our denominators. We have a 3, a 3, and a 6. So we're going to look at the biggest one, which is 6, and the question is 6 divisible by 3? This 3 comes from the other denominators we're talking about, and this 6 is our biggest denominator. We know that that equals 2, so that tells us our LCD is going to be 6. So we're going to multiply each piece of this problem by, let me rewrite it so we have a little more room. So we have 2/3 plus 2/3, x plus 1 equals 1/6. So we're going to take that LCD and we're going to multiply by 6. We're going to multiply by 6 and multiply by 6. Now this is the same as writing that as 6/1. So if you want to write it in fraction form, you can, but you don't have to. So now we're going to do this. 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. Then we have 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. And x plus 1 stays the same. And then we have 6 times 1 is 6. And 1 times 6 is 6. So when we do that, we can then simplify. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Then we have 12 divided by 3 again, which is 4. And then we have 6 divided by 6, which is 1. So we've gotten rid of the fractions by doing that, and now we can solve the rest of the question. So I'm gonna move this out of our way. Give me a second. So this is the center of our equation. We're going to get rid of the parentheses by distributing. So we end up with 4 plus 4x plus 4 equals 1. Then we can combine like terms. 4 plus 4 are the same. So we get 4x plus 8 equals 1. Then we can move that 8 to the other side by subtracting it. And we get 4x equals -7. And now we can break apart that multiplication with division. And we get x equals -7/4. So we can go back and look at the steps that we have. Multiply by the LCD to get rid of the fraction. That's what we did here. Then we distributed to get rid of the parentheses. So we distribute there. Then we combined like terms, 4 plus 4. Then we moved all the variables to the left. We only had x on one side, so we didn't have to move any variables. Then we moved all the numbers to the right. So the plus 8, we subtracted 8 from both sides. And then we got the variable alone using multiplication or division. So we did divide by 4 at the end here. So this next question asks us to solve the formula for P. So that means get P alone. So we're going to mark the center of our equation. And then we're going to get P by itself. So this P is being multiplied by 1 plus RT. So we have two options here. First, we can break apart that multiplication using division. Whatever we do to the right side, we have to do the same to the left. And we end up getting P by itself pretty easily if that's what you do first. 1 plus RT is going to cancel, and we're just left with S over 1 plus RT equals P. Now, I feel like a lot of you would look at this, you would see the parentheses, and you would think, I should distribute here. Right, so the center of our equation, you might look at that and think, I've got to get rid of these parentheses. So here I have S equals P times 1 gives us 1p, and then p times rt gives us PRT. So here we went from having 1p to having 2p's. Do you see the problem with that? We already had 1p and we needed to get it alone, and then we created a bigger mess by having 2p's when we distributed. So that should be a good indicator that you're not going to be able to solve this problem this way, so you need to look at it a different way. So the next one says, to get the variable out of the denominator, multiply both sides by the whole denominator in parentheses, so then we don't forget to distribute. So we're going to take this equation. We've got this x on the bottom, and we're supposed to get x alone. So we're going to take this whole denominator and we are going to multiply by 3 minus x on the right, and we're going to multiply by 3 minus x on the left. Now, I'm going to write this step again. I like to put the y in front, and on the right, 3 minus x and 3 minus x cancel, and we're just left with 9. So when we put this y in front, it's really clear for us to see that we need to distribute. Sometimes when we write it in the back, we forget that it's being multiplied by everything in the parenthesis. So we have y times 3 is 3y, and y times negative x is negative xy. Now don't forget our goal is to get this x by itself. So first we had to get it out of the denominator, then we had to get it out of the parentheses, and now we need to get it alone. So we want this x term by itself, so we are going to minus 3y from both sides. Nine and negative 3y are not like terms, so all we can do is write them beside each other. And then we still want this x by itself, so that shows us we need to move the negative and we need to move the y. So now we're going to divide by negative y on both sides. So on the left, the negative and the y cancel, and we're just left with x equals 9 minus 3y over negative y, and we are going to leave our answer just like that. So our next one is about consecutive integers. So it says the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 246. List the numbers from smallest to largest. So first we need to talk about what consecutive means. So when you see the word consecutive, you should think 3 numbers in a row. That's going to be, for example, 2, 3, and 4 are 3 consecutive integers. We could have 100, 101, 102. We could have 14, 15, 16. So 3 numbers in a row are going to be consecutive integers. And I'm going to give you a hint here. If our first number is x, the number after x would be x plus 1. And then the number after that would be x plus 2. So if we plugged into this, let's say x was 5. What is 5 plus 1? Well, that's 6. And then 5 plus 2 gives us 7. And you'll see you have 5, 6, 7, which is 3 consecutive integers. So that's just a quick example that works for those formulas. So now the next part of the question says the sum of 3 consecutive integers, which means we have to add them, and is means equals. So we have x plus x plus 1 plus x plus 2 equals 246. We took the first number, we added it to x plus 1, and then we added that to x plus 2. So now we can combine like terms. So we have x, and x that are the same, and 1 and 2 that are the same. So that's going to give us 3x's plus 3 equals 246. And now we have a basic equation that we hopefully know how to solve. So we can subtract 3 from both sides. And we get 3x equals 243. Then we would divide by 3. And we would get x equals 81. Now, since we know that x equals 81, that tells us that our first number is 81, our second number is 82, and our third number is going to be 83. A car dealer recently had a promotion which they gave a 6% discount to the first 50 people through the door. If you are one of those people and the car you are interested in costs $21,800, find the discount amount and the new price of the car. So this has the discount would be blank. If needed, round to the nearest cent, and don't put any commas in. And then we're going to find the cost of the car after the discount is applied. So for us to do this, let's first mark that when we see the word discount, that tells us we are going to subtract because we're paying less than the original price. So first we have the discount amount, which is going to be 6%. We can never plug a percentage in, so we need to change that to a decimal. So it becomes 0.06. And is it important to know the number 50? So the question isn't asking us about how many people, it's asking us about price. So 50 people isn't really important in this question, so we're going to cross out the 50 so we don't try to use it. So if the car you're interested in costs $21,800, that is the starting price of the car. Then we need to know how much the discount is going to be. So our discount is going to be 6% of the price of the car. So if we find 0.06 times, so that means that the discount in dollars is $1,308. This is the price of the car. So if we take the price and we subtract the discount, that's going to give us the new price. So now we have 21,000 minus 13,000, nope, 1,308 so that gives us 20,000, no comma, $492. So the discount would be $1,308, and the cost of the car would be $20492. And it tells us don't put commas in, so we're not going to add those. So after eating at a restaurant, your meal came to $42.50, including the tax. You decide to give a 17% tip, adding it to the total meal cost. So let's look at the parts here. We have $42.50 is the meal cost. So we're going to look at the way this is labeled so we don't get confused. M is the meal cost, right? And we just said that that's $42.50. Then we have the total meal cost, which the total meal cost is going to be represented by the meal cost plus the tip. So we have the meal cost and the total meal cost. So don't mix those up. They're almost called the same thing. So if we know that 17% has to be converted to a decimal, we're going to write it as 0.17. And we know that if we take the price of the meal, or the meal cost, $42.50, and we multiply that by 17%, then that's going to give us the tip amount. So the tip in dollars is going to be $7.20. It's 22.5, so we're going to round that to $7.23. So the first part of this question says, write the equation you would use to solve this problem. So we know that we have to use M for our variable. I wrote it in words. We need to write it in an equation. So we have our meal cost plus 17% of the meal, which is the tip. So that's the first part of the question. Then it asks you to find the total cost of the meal, which we already found the tip amount, and we have the meal cost. So now we can add those two together. So we have $42.50 plus the tip, which was $7.23. And we get 49.73. So the total meal cost, or the total cost of the meal, is $49.73. So the next one is it's a formula. We're going to take the information given. So we have convert 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So that means that F equals 5 to Celsius. So we are finding C. So we're going to take the given formula, F equals 9 over 5 C plus 32. That's given to you right here. And we're going to plug in 5 for F. Then we can work on getting C by itself. That's what we're looking for. We're asked to find C, so that means get this C by itself. So for us to do that, we first need to move the positive 32 by subtracting 32 from both sides. And we get negative 27 equals 9 over 5 C. So the question that I get most is, do I have to keep those parentheses? Are these parentheses important? So they tell us that these two things are being multiplied together, but we don't have to have those. So we can take this and write it as negative 27 equals 9 over 5 with the C beside it. The important part is this is multiplication. Did it stay multiplication? It did, so we're okay. So now for us to get rid of the fraction, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, which means flip the fraction. So we're going to take this fraction and we're going to flip it, and we're going to multiply by 5 over 9. We're going to write that negative 27 over 1. And then that's going to give us negative 135. And that's because we did 5 times negative 27. And then we're going to do 9 times 1. So over 9. And then on the right side, 5 on top cancels 5 on bottom. 9 on bottom cancels 9 on top. And we're just left with C. Now we can take this and we can do negative 135 divided by 9, which gives us a negative 15 equals C. So our final answer is 5 degrees Fahrenheit equals negative 15 degrees Celsius. And then the last example, oh, nope, we have 2 more examples for this section. The next to the last one says, if the length of a rectangular field is 32 feet less than 5 times its width, and the perimeter is 332 feet, what is the length of the rectangular field? So that's what we're looking for. So first, let's draw a rectangular field. So it tells us the length of the field is 32 feet less than 5 times its width. So first, let's label the width. as W. Then we have to do 5 times the width, which is going to be 5W. And then we need to do 32 feet less than that, which means we're going to take away 32. So that gives us all of the sides of the rectangle. And then it tells us that the perimeter is 332 feet. Now, perimeter means the outside or the distance outside of the figure. So if we add up all the sides, so we're going to take 5W minus 32 plus W plus 5W minus 32 plus W. So we've got 5W minus 32 plus W plus 5W minus 32 plus W equals 332 feet. Right, 5W minus 32 is here, plus W is here, plus 5W minus 32 is here, plus W is here. So now we can combine like terms. We've got our W's, and we have our numbers without the W, which is negative 32. So 5W plus 1W plus 5W plus 1W gives us 12W. And that's coming from the pink ones. And then we have negative 32 and negative 32 is negative 64. And that comes from the green ones. And this still equals 332. So now we can work on getting W by itself. So we're going to add 64. And then divide by 12. And we get W equals 33 feet. Now, the question asks us to find the length, or it says the length of a rectangular field is blank. We found the width. So now we need to take that W, we need to come back over here, and we need to plug it into the length. So we end up with 5 times 33 minus 32. Five times 33 is 165 minus 32 is 133. Now, you can check this by adding up all the sides of the rectangle and making sure that it equals 332 feet. So if we wanted to check it, we would get 133 plus 133 plus 33 plus 33. Grab your calculator, you can plug it into your calculator, and you get 332 feet. which is what we needed. It's what we were looking for because that's our perimeter. A high-speed boat travels from the mainland to an island 170 miles away in 5 3/4 hours. What is the boat's average speed, if necessary, round to 2 decimal places? So this tells us that speed is going to be in miles per hour, and it gives us a formula. Distance equals rate times time. So let's label all of our parts. What is our distance that's being traveled? So our distance is 170 miles away. Then we have our rate. And so since the question is asking what is the boat's average speed, we don't know the rate, but we do know that it's going to be in miles per hour. And then we have time. And this tells us 5 3/4 hours. Now, we don't want to plug in a mixed number here. So we're going to take our calculator and we can plug 3/4 into our calculator. And that's going to tell us that that's the same as 0.75, or you can think about it like 3/4 equals 75 cents. So that's going to be 5.75 hours. So now we're going to go straight to the formula. We're going to plug in 170 for the distance. We're going to plug in x for the rate, and we are going to plug in 5.75 for the time. Now, if you use a dot for multiplication, you might confuse it with a decimal. So you can always just throw those in parentheses so you know that it means multiplication. So we have 170 equals 5.75x, and we'll divide by 5.75 and divide by 5.75. Let me plug that in my calculator. And we get 29.5652 equals x. Now, the question does tell us that we want to round to 2 decimal places. So we're going to look at the 6, check out the number beside it. If it's 5 or more, then that 6 is going to become a 7. So we get 29.57 miles per hour, and that is our final answer.